move forward in time. So after doing the large ethnographies and with the help of the MacArthur Foundation, we started asking some of the empirical questions of, okay, so kids are doing this kind of work, but what kinds of text are they? My work has always tended to follow the games that are most popular. At the time we were studying Lineage, it was because it was the largest global game, the most popular global game on the market when I studied it. So a couple years later, World of Warcraft dominated the market of MMOs. So we shifted to World of Warcraft and started studying what's happening there. And here's some of the questions that we asked. First off, what kind of reading and writing resources are gamers interacting with? What is the quality and quantity of this kind of work? So we did some resource network interviews, interviewing 25 experts and 21 novices on the game to exhaustion, meaning that we asked kids to give me a complete list of everything that you use when you're playing something like World of Warcraft that is in any way a text resource around the game, and then we analyzed that set. And what we found was that 46% of the resources that kids were using for gameplay were in fact expository texts. They were informational resources. So, for example, text that functions as a manual to the game, or text that explains a quest. It was sort of expository text that's explaining how to do the game better. 11% was discussion forums. A whole other swath of text was guild organizational tools, so things like guild websites. Fandom medium for these sites is about 7% of what they're doing. So fan fiction of the stories that I saw was just a small sliver. So let's take a look at this much bigger swath of what are the kind of resources kids are looking at. So here's an example information resource. This one is from Wowhead. It was the #1 cited reference and resource that kids were using around the game. Here's its actual page, and if you look at its structure, so this shows you sort of the structure of that page. What are these pages like? Turns out they're kind of complicated. So first off, they're a really interesting and difficult to read mix of text, symbols, and images. You, in fact, have 1/2, the very top part of the page of these resources, in this case, Wowhead, is culled from the game itself. So there are apps people use to harvest information off the game servers. Then that information is represented on the web page. So for example, in this case, it's information about a particular staff used in the game. So it gives you statistics of the staff right off the game itself, so they're accurate. Now the bottom half is all user-authored information. And a lot of that authored information is really complicated. So you'll have pages and pages of discussion and other kinds of posts that are a really interesting mix or genre of the kind of text that you'll see. Expository text, text that's explaining, which actually tends, for what it's worth, to be the harder kind of text for kids to read. Procedural text, text that tells you do A, then B, then C, then D, then E. Transactional text, which is text interactions with one another, much like the in-game discussion that I shared with you. And persuasive text, basically trying to make you an argument for something and get you to follow somebody else's protocol. Now that complicated sort of morass of what the text is like, if you pull some sample pages, we pulled 50 pages at random and looked at things like the reading level. It turns out that the average reading level for game-based text is about 12th grade. That's interesting when you compare it, by the way, to things like news magazines. Newsweek reads at a lower reading level, for what it's worth, than something like a game-based text. If you do a lexical analysis, meaning if you look at what are the words, the vocabulary types used in a game text like this, you find that about 70% are what you would consider K1 words, meaning they're the 1,000 most common words in the language. Another 6% are K2 words, less frequent. The number I find interesting is the AWL words. Those are the academic words. These are words that, in fact, are considered academic vocabulary that appears across all textbooks. So words like acquired, words like testament, words like stabilization. What does that mean? Well, anywhere between 4 and 8% is considered a good kind of reading intervention, a good sort of stable text to teach academic vocabulary to young learners. That means that you're about around the area that you'd want if you want to teach kids new academic vocabulary. About 20% of the language used in these particular texts is what you would consider off-list words, or words that are simply based on the games themselves. So 46% expository text, 12th grade reading level, 4% is academic vocabulary. Not bad, right? If you want to ask the question of what's the quality of text being read and produced around these games, we're hardly off in the world where we need to worry about kids no longer reading and writing or being basically literate in a basic skills way because they're somehow gaming.